Ever catch yourself totally lost trying to follow some tech instructions? Like they were written in some code you're supposed to just get.
Yeah, we've all been there.
It's the worst. But today, we're diving into a topic that's trying to fix that whole mess, accessibility and inclusivity in the tech writing world. And our guide for this deep dive is Curt Robbins.
And this guy, he's not just talking the talk. Robbins is a senior technical writer himself. He's been in the thick of it, working with some big names too, like FedEx, Microsoft, even USAA, getting their tech communication in shape.
Oh, wow. So he's worked with those kinds of systems firsthand.
Yeah, exactly. When this guy talks about making tech writing more accessible, more inclusive, he knows what he's talking about. It's not just theory with him.
Okay, so what's the core of his argument then?
So he says it's more than just, checking off boxes because some legal team said so. Robbins is pushing for a total mind shift, like really understanding that making information accessible, it's an ethical thing, like it's the right thing to do.
So almost like there's a moral responsibility to make sure anyone can understand this tech stuff.
Exactly. Imagine something like a medical device, right? Something that could literally save your life. But the instructions, they're written so only like a tech genius could figure them out. That's the problem Robbins is getting at. He wants tech to be for everyone, no matter their abilities or background.
That makes sense, making sure everyone has a fair shot at using technology no matter what.
Right. And here's something Robbins pointed out that I thought was interesting. Accessibility, it's not just for people with disabilities. It helps everyone.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about a time you were trying to use your phone outside on a super bright day. Or maybe you're trying to follow a recipe on your phone while you're cooking. Only have one hand free.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
That's accessibility in action. It's
Right.
about making things work for everyone, no matter their situation.
It's true. I never thought about it that way before, but it makes total sense. Designing for everybody, basically, not just a small group.
Exactly. And Robbins argues that everyone, at some point, is going to need a more accessible approach to this tech stuff.
So it's like we all benefit from this stuff being easier to use for everybody.
Exactly. And Robbins gets into the how-to here, like how do we actually make this happen?
Yeah, because it sounds great in theory, but what are some practical things writers can actually do?
Well, he talks about a bunch of different strategies, but one of the big ones that stood out to me was this idea of structured content.
Okay, structured content. I feel like I've heard that term before, but I'm not 100% sure I could explain it.
So think about like those websites where they have those FAQ sections and you can like click to expand each question.
Yeah.
That's structured content. For us, it's just a way to find info quickly. But for someone using a screen reader, someone who can't see the page, it's huge. It's how they navigate the whole thing, gives it order.
Ah, so it's like giving everyone a roadmap, no matter how they're accessing the information.
Exactly. Another big one he talks about is language. Like using clear language, avoiding all that technical jargon.
Well, yeah, I mean, that just makes sense.
It does, but you'd be surprised how often it doesn't happen. And using plain language, it helps everybody, but especially people with cognitive differences. Maybe English isn't their first language. It's about making sure as many people as possible can understand.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's, like you said earlier, designing for that broad spectrum. Though it can't always be easy to explain complex tech stuff in simple terms, right?
You're telling me it's a real challenge, but Robbins doesn't stop there. He takes it a step further and talks about inclusivity too.
Okay, so you've talked about this before, the difference between accessibility and inclusivity. Can you remind us what that is, especially in the context of technical writing?
Sure. So accessibility, it's about making sure people can access the information, period. Inclusivity, it's about making sure everyone feels welcome and how that information is shown to them.
So it's not just about understanding the words, it's about how those words make you feel, whether you feel included by them.
Exactly. Like Robbins talks about this. When you're giving examples, why not use a variety of names? Not just the default John and Jane all the time, right?
Ah, right. Makes a difference.
It does, and it goes beyond just names. It's about being aware of how you're talking about gender, thinking about older users, people with cognitive differences. It's about making sure everyone feels like they're part of the conversation.
I get it. Like you're acknowledging that everyone uses this tech, not just one kind of person.
Exactly. And Robbins, to his credit, he doesn't shy away from the challenges. He gets real about how tough it can be to make this happen.
What are some of the hurdles he sees?
Well, one of the biggest is this balancing act. Like, you want to make things accessible, but you also don't want to sacrifice accuracy, right? The information still has to be technically correct.
Yeah, you can't simplify it to the point where it's just wrong.
Right, it's got to be accurate and understandable. It's a tough needle to thread. And then there's the whole challenge of just keeping up. Tech changes so fast. What's accessible today might not be tomorrow. Like, think about stuff like augmented reality, virtual reality.
Yeah,
We're
completely new ways of interacting with information.
Exactly. So how do we adapt accessibility for those? It's a moving target. And on top of all that, there's no one set of standards. What works for one company, one platform, might not fly somewhere else. So it can be tough for tech writers to keep up.
It's a lot to keep up with.
Yeah, for sure. But Robbins, he's adamant about this. He says if we ignore these challenges, we end up excluding tons of people, you know?
And that's not just bad for business. It's like holding technology back from what it could be.
Exactly. It's about making a digital world where everyone's included. And Robin's work, it really brings us home, you know, something like technical writing sounds kind of basic, right? But it's actually so important for making this happen.
Totally. It's like we're talking about ethical obligations for the future of technology here.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. This isn't just some trend. This is about building a better future for everyone. And by making tech information truly accessible, we're not just making it easier to understand, we're breaking down barriers so everyone can be part of the digital age.
I love that. Everyone can be a part of it. So for our listeners out there today, what's the one big takeaway you hope they walk away with from Robin's work?
That's a good question. I think it's this. Information is for everyone. When we embrace these ideas, accessibility and inclusivity in tech writing, we're not just making tech better, we're making the world a more equal place.
That is a powerful takeaway. Makes you think, right? Like all those times you struggled with some tech instructions, how different that could have been.
Totally.
Well, this has been eye-opening. It's amazing how digging into something like technical writing can bring up these huge ideas. Thanks for guiding us through it.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.